Hi, this is Zach D. Roberts, co-host of the Around the Lens podcast, for another Behind the Lens episode where we chat with photographers and those in the industry about the issues that we face in a bit more depth than we usually can do on the weekly live show. If you're a fan of these, please check out our Patreon at www.patreon.com/aroundthelens. And for as little as $1 a month, you can get early access to these chats and much, much more. The more people support the show, the more special episodes we can do. I'm chatting this week with Sue Morrow. She's the editor of News Photographer, the National Press Photographer Association's official magazine, which is published every other month. You can subscribe to the magazine by going to nppa.org and becoming a member. Or if you don't want to become a member, which I encourage you to do, you can just get the magazine by emailing Sue at smorrow@nppa.org. And we'll have all these links in the show notes, of course. But let's get to our conversation.
What I do, I am, as of August of 2018, I became the editor of News Photographer magazine, which is the magazine for the National Press Photographers Association. I've spent my career as a photo editor and designer at many newspapers, most recently the Sacramento Bee, St. Petersburg Times, which is now the Tampa Bay Times.
Yep.
I was the AME of photo and graphics there, and the San Jose Mercury News. Did 11 months at the Boston Globe back in 93, 94. So yeah,
Cool.
that's
What
my
what so
that's
what
that's it.
what have you I mean I see you've done filming, and we'll talk about that later. This is something I always find interesting, like what made you decide to focus, it seems, at least on photo editing versus focus on photography. I mean, I get that there's not necessarily a difference, but I'm just saying, like, focus on doing the editing versus doing primarily shooting, or at least calling it that. Yeah. If that makes
Well,
sense.
let's see. I started out in art school
Hmm.
in Indianapolis. I went to John Heron School of Art, and then I took like a veer to another path of life that didn't quite work out. And so when I finally got back to complete my undergrad degree, within that
Hmm.
time, I discovered photojournalism,
Yeah.
went back to Indiana University. So I was about 7 or 8 years older than my peers, and they were amazing photographers. We're talking about Chris Usher and Tom Hirschfeld and Gary Bogdan,
Hmm.
um, that era, Richard Schultz, very successful photographers to this day.
Yeah.
And Nadia Borowski was another one. And it's like I was so behind, and I realized that my strengths were in editing, and that at that time they professors John Alhauser and Will Counts, they were exploring an editing track,
Hmm.
and so I kind of dove into that. And with my art background, things just kind of came together.
Yeah.
And I wanted to work at big newspapers, and I felt like um, I could probably do my better work and get where I wanted to be quicker.
Yeah.
I also had a confidence problem, that I wasn't a photographer.
Yeah.
I wasn't a strong photographer as my peers. So that's why it's basically it. And that's where jobs were at the time. And it was
Yeah.
just, it ended up being a very good fit. That was like 1988.
Hmm. What do you,
Yeah.
we actually on Around the Lens, we don't get a lot of photo editors on. I think we
Right.
probably had like two or three, which is like, we've had
Uh
probably
huh.
over 100 and some guests on over the years. And what so like, I know we want to talk about News Photographer magazine, but like, what advice, if there any, like, to get into that world, would you give anybody, especially now? I get that, like, when you started, it was like probably a little bit different, considerably different game, just because there's, a third of number of newspapers around.
Yeah.
We have to laugh because that's the only choice. But
It's, yeah,
yeah,
I agree. Um, Boy, I've had this conversation a lot
yeah.
lately, and about where is the visual leadership these
Mhm.
days. and it quite frankly makes me a little nervous that we don't it's being eliminated. Um, at your larger papers, the infrastructure for visual leadership is still there, of course.
Yeah.
But at your smaller papers, not so much. And I'm giving some thought about, okay, so how do we support those photographers at this small to medium market papers
Yeah.
to have more confidence about their editing and their shooting abilities and what makes a good picture? Because quite frankly, I'm seeing a lot of okay, contest entries that are not very strongly edited because you can just tell.
Yeah.
And that concerns me a great deal. So, how do you get into that line of work right now? I don't have a good answer.
Mhm.
It's just more about if you really want to pursue it, you've got to make contacts with those larger papers
Yeah.
and figure out how to get your foot in the door. The Kalish picture editing workshop is something I've been involved with for over 20 years. And that was something I attended the second year of the workshop in 91. And that experience really helped me gain the confidence that I needed.
Yeah.
Um, and it's still going strong to this day. And it's not just picture editors who attend, but it's photographers because I find that visual editing is not just about still photography, it's about nonlinear editing
Yeah.
and it's about moving pictures.
Mhm.
And so editing comes into play in all kinds of forms. So, are you just a still photo picture editor? No, you're not.
Yeah.
It comes in a lot of different forms these days. But if that's what you choose to go into, I think there's a lot of more creative ways to do it rather than the direct path that I took.
Yeah, no, I've been kind of playing around with the idea of trying to get into it because I think I'm like you where I'm looking around and I started similarly 7 years later. I'd been doing journalism and then moved into photojournalism, or been
Mhm.
doing print journalism. No, it's journalism. And then moved in and it's just one of those I'm like enjoying so much helping other photographers kind of figure out things with their own work. And then I'm looking at my own work and I'm like, God, I really need an editor.
Being an editor
Yeah,
it's an egoless position. You can't care
yeah,
about saying your name or a
yeah,
byline. You have to you really have to you're a conduit for
yeah,
others' work, and
yeah,
I have found that to be extraordinarily rewarding.
yeah.
Um,
No, I've yeah,
yeah.
I've been unfortunately, and I think this is one of the problems with a lot of freelancers that I talk to, and there's a lot of especially ones that don't have like there's freelancers that like, oh, he's a freelancer who works for the Times, a freelancer who works for the Post, Washington Post, like someone like
Special
me.
to the right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and like, yeah, then you have an editor. Like, I've had probably when I worked for Al Jazeera, I did a one story for Al Jazeera America. I had a photo editor, Mike Rykoff, fantastic photo editor. I feel bad because I didn't know how to deal with one. And
Mhm.
then I think one other story, I think maybe I did a piece for the Guardian, where I had like actual conversations with things, but that's it. Like I worked for the Village Voice for freelance for like 2 years, 3 years, and we had just every time I'd have an assignment, it was a new arts editor. It was never or art editor or something like that. It was never actual. It was never a photojournalist. Usually, it was just somebody who does the layout, decides photos or whatever, and art, and that sort of thing. So it's tough. But we have like I really wanted you on to talk about not just the best of photojournalism magazine, which is gorgeous and I love it, but the big changes that I feel like you've made at the magazine, which I am loving it so much more. I've always loved it,
Oh, thank you.
but like since you took over, I've noticed a massive just change. Like I feel like let me ask you first. I mean, like, why did you decide what drew you to the NPPA News Photographer magazine?
Um, well, for one, I've been a member since, oh my goodness,
Hmm.
the mid 80s, right? I was the student chapter involved and
Oh,
stuff
wow.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, helped with flying short courses. And Akili, the executive director, Akili Ramses, she and I used to work together at the San Jose Mercury News,
Mhm.
and she called me kind of out of the blue last spring. And it's so weird. Our industry is such a small world, you know. We all know each other for real or virtually, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's she says, "Hey, I got a question for you." And at the time I was headed back to the Sacramento Bee. I had been on a leave. I was teaching
Mhm.
at Ohio University at the
Cool.
School of Journalism. And so I was headed back to work, and she presented this, "Hey, you know, we've got this opening and this magazine." Is like, "Oh my God, News Photographer magazine." It's like,
Yeah.
I kind of grew up with it, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And it's like, holy moly, could that be possibly be a is that potential? And so it was just great timing for me. And I feel like, you know, it just worked out. And I want to give a huge nod to my predecessors, starting with Jim Gordon.
Mhm.
I mean, he was the editor of that monthly when it was a monthly magazine for God out how many years? Over 25 years or something.
Yeah.
After him, Don Winslow's been a terrific friend of mine for since 1988. Um, and Don just did a fabulous job, and then Tom Burton picked it up. I've only gotten to know Tom uh, since I took on this job,
Mhm.
and Tom has been a tremendous help to me in the transition, and he still is. And I can't thank both of those guys enough, because every now and then when I come up with something, I'm like stumped. I'm like, oh my God, what would they do? They're
Yeah.
always there. They're always there to help me. But a little bit about the design. You know, I'm a designer and I love typography.
Mhm.
I've never considered myself a great designer, but I know how to use pictures
Yeah.
and I know how to edit. And so I pulled those things together. And honestly, just with a few tweaks, I mean, the infrastructure was there,
Mhm.
but it just needed some honing and some tweaking, you know. Um, I turned to my good friend Julie Ellman. She's a design instructor at Ohio University and Viscom. And I said, Julie, let's tweak this thing. And I sent her some samples of what I was working on. And she goes, yep, you're on the right track. So, you know, yes, I'm a team of one generally,
Yeah.
putting the whole thing, putting all the pieces all up. I love puzzles, so this is a great thing for me.
Yeah, yeah.
So I I I'm the one who does all that, but then the real fun starts when you get to talk to people on the
Yeah.
phone every day, and well, not every day, every other day.
Yeah.
And you talk to people about their experiences, and then you start to put their amazing work on the pages of News Photographer magazine. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I just get out of the way. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing a designer can do when you've got great work staring at you. It lays itself out and you
Mhm.
just get out of the way of the content and let it run, and use typography and as as a complement
Yeah.
to the main show.
And this has got to be like the dream. Like I can imagine this has to be like a photo editor's dream. Especially within this world. Like what are the magazines out there now? You know, I mean, because you have an opportunity to basically do Look magazine, Life magazine from the
Oh,
from
yeah.
the 50s and 60s, because you have access to on somewhat level or another all the best photojournalism in the world. There's no like when you're a local, like I remember being a student, I did the layout for my student paper my back in 99. So cork I was using
Oh,
on a
remember
I
that?
miss, don't you miss
Yeah.
cork? I miss cork. um
I miss saying it. Cork.
yes, yes. I was so good at cork, and then I have a graphic design friend who's like, well, InDesign is so much better, and I'm like, I don't, these are all this is I don't understand this. But
Yeah.
like there was, you only had the photos that most small town newspapers don't have access to. They're not taking New York Times, Washington Post, Chronicle photos or anything like that. It's just photos of groups of people. But I mean, like you look through any issue of of a news photographer, and it's just like, okay, so any of these photos could be a potential Pulitzer Prize winner, or world press. And that's what you
Yeah.
have going through. So I mean, like, that, what has that experience been like?
Oh my God. Well, okay, so I guess you're talking about the March April issue, the black and white issue.
Oh, I'm talking. I mean,
Mostly?
I'm talking about any of them, honestly. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, and obviously, we should get to best photography, photojournalism of the
Oh,
year.
okay. Okay.
But no, but any of them, just being able to, like, when you
Honestly,
talk to journalists and then be able to have access to their photography,
oh my God, it's amazing. It's
yeah,
freaking amazing. But I got to tell you,
yeah,
in some ways, I find this particularly rewarding because I finally, and I'm all about teamwork, don't get me
mhm,
wrong.
yeah,
But all those years that I spent arguing for pictures, and
yeah,
I knew what needed to be done, and that
yeah,
you had to have these, as I look back, these ridiculous arguments about, you know, just a column size or a half a column size or
yeah,
5 acres.
yeah.
I was like constantly arguing for space. And it's like now I'm like, hmm, I'm holding back my mouth.
I
It's
mean, that's
like
one thing I love. Like,
it, it's
you're like,
it's like
yeah,
it's like God dang it, I can do this now, and I always knew how to do it.
yeah,
And I'm almost like, F you to the people that I've argued with my whole freaking career. I know what the hell I'm doing.
yeah,
And so from that point of view, it's been really fun.
yeah,
Um, so what it's like the first BOP issue that I did, the November, December issue last year,
yeah.
um, that was my second issue,
Oh my,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, oh my God is
yeah,
right. And it's like, holy God, what am I doing? And I had to get larger files from almost everybody.
yeah.
So, and I'm talking large files. I'm talking 300 res, 17 inches.
Mhm.
You know, I'll get tattooed on my hand. But anyway,
Yeah, I know.
it's just like that's what I'm looking for. And you email Carol Guzzi, and 2 days later, in drops a folder full of Carol Guzzi pictures, and we are like, holy shit, this is incredible.
Yeah,
And people are so freaking nice,
yeah,
and I'm so grateful that I'm able to touch their pictures
yeah,
to do this. And there's one other thing I'd like to point out,
yeah,
and I'm torn about this because News Photographer is a trade magazine for our industry,
mhm,
and people give me the use of their photos,
yeah,
and the NPPA budget for this is not big.
mhm,
And so I'm also grateful for that opportunity because in this day and age, yeah, we could argue that damn right I should be paying for these pictures.
mhm,
But with the magazine being what it is in this for this organization,
mhm,
I think it's always been a place to give back. And even some of the stories that are written are voluntarily written because people want to do them for their own motivational reasons, but they do it in a timely manner and they do it well.
yeah,
And so I'm just grateful, and it gets better. It gets better with each bi-monthly issue that we do.
yeah. I mean, I didn't know that they, were given that way. But has there been, and I could be wrong if it's not, but is it possible that we would look forward to it potentially one day being open to other than just members?
You mean you? Oh, see, okay, now you're
Right.
leaping to where I want to go.
Oh
Um,
yeah, because I mean, that's one thing where it's just, the I because, when you're looking at the fact that, Life is gone, Look is gone, Newsweek, all the glossy magazines have gotten smaller. Like, I mean, if you actually look at the profile of, like, Newsweek, I think
oh,
either
it's
Newsweek or
sad,
Time got chopped. Like, they
right?
lost a little bit. And then, sadly, all the publications I work for very rarely use, if they're in print, they don't use that many photos, or they're more of a newspaper print because it's like, cheaper, cheaper pulled,
Yeah.
smaller political magazines. But I've been, one of the reasons that we started this podcast is because there's not a lot of conversation about photojournalism specifically. There's a lot of conversation about photography. I mean, there's outdoor photography, I mean, there's a billion nature photography magazines, a billion art ones, and things like that. But like I was always finding like outside of PDN, which I love, Photo District News. I it's like probably the only other magazine that I read like cover to cover other than News Photographer.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so because it's, it's hard to find physical, like I like looking at physical photos in a magazine. That's why I got into
It,
one of the reasons I got into this business,
yeah,
you
right.
know?
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. And that experience of holding something in your hands and looking at it is a completely
Yeah.
different experience than an online experience, which I think there's great value to that too. But you know, it's okay. So, yeah, okay. These are things that are rumbling around in my mind. I think that we have an opportunity here.
Mhm.
I think that um, News Photographer magazine, I want it to look like a coffee table magazine.
Yeah.
I think it should. I don't think we are a breaking news magazine.
Yeah,
How
of
is that
course.
even
Yeah.
possible?
Yeah.
So let's not even try to do that. We do we do membership news. That's great. What
Mhm.
is our advocacy team doing? What are our board members talking about? What are we aiming for? I think all that stuff is important, but
Yeah.
it's got to be bundled around this core content about photography, photojournalism, and I think it is a very unique experience. The magazine is available subscription only.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that's something that we are working on for our website. If anybody knows Drupal, oh my God, please help me. I don't. My brain is not.
I'll put out the word for you.
Please do.
Yeah.
I, I'm looking for. We are looking for somebody who can help um, really tweak this website where the magazine content can be found. I mean, it's done a good job up to now, but it needs some help, and my brain is not wired to go
Mhm.
behind that curtain.
Yeah.
I know what I want, but I
Yeah.
don't know how to get there.
Yep.
So we're trying to figure that out. Where there's actually a magazine menu bar and an advocacy bar where you can actually find things a lot easier than what we're able to do now.
Yeah.
And you can actually, because a lot of people have said, "Can I just get the magazine?" I'm not in photojournalism anymore. I'm in
Yeah.
healthcare or whatever. I'm like, well, yeah, you can. And then I went, it's like, try to find a link. I'm like, try to find it.
Yeah.
So
I
we're
swear I
working on it.
remember seeing it like 2 websites ago, and that's why I was
Yeah.
wondering if it just went away or what, but on the other hand, I think that was 10
Um,
years ago, and I don't
link
remember much, but yeah.
links are currently being repaired. There's been a lot of server repairing going on behind the scenes
Mhm.
since February, I think. So
Yeah.
we're working on it. But when that is like super available to find,
Mhm.
you'll be able to go to nppa.org and find that.
Fantastic.
Moreover, it's like, yeah, of course, we want people to become members and get the magazine, but um, you can do that. Right now,
Mhm.
the only way to really do it consistently is email me and I'll set you up.
Okay.
I'll connect
I'll
you
put your
with
email
Thomas.
out there and hopefully you'll get but, I don't wanna,
We're not
like,
a we're not a large organization, so
no, I know.
it's like
It's one
I
thing.
will respond, I
Yeah,
swear.
yeah, yeah. That's like I feel like I went to one Northern Shore course and now I know almost everybody at the
Mhm.
NPPA.
It's a
But
great
you,
thing.
oh yeah, no, I deeply regret not going beforehand. Especially like I've talked about it like a dozen times on we have a our weekly show, and I've like basically been evangelical about specifically the Northern Shore courses because even though like I ended up skipping a couple blocks and just hanging out with people. And that to me was by far the most valuable thing of not only like a handful of people that just I've known and I've had on the show 6 times. They live like 3 hours away from me, but
Yeah.
literally I'm like, what? I think we might have met once, sort of
I know.
thing. Having drinks with them and like having our laptops out and being like, oh yeah, we get to show things. And then the kid, like the college students, I guess I can say kids, like I'm old enough. But the college students, like the enthusiasm about photojournalism, like I got like I've been periodically drained of like, oh, do I want to? I don't know what else to do in this industry, but I have to, like, I don't know what else to do other than do photojournalism, but like it's just sometimes trying. And then I went to a Northern Shore course and I'm like, okay, cool. Like
Yeah.
it was just like the energy
Yeah.
that I needed to go back to it. But I asked if there's anything in particular that you wanted to talk about, and you said your column in the Best of Photojournalism Award. And I went through there like 7 times, and I was like, oh my God, wait, I was just about to message you. And then I opened it up and I looked to the left of where the William Snyder and Michael King had their column. And I was like, oh, because I've read your other ones, and I'm like, they're full columns. Do you have it in front of you, or do you want me to read it?
Oh, I haven't. Yeah. Hang on, I'll reach for it. Opening up this magazine, the March April edition of News Photographer 2019. Oh, wait a minute. That's not the one I'm looking for. Hang on a minute. Opening up the May June edition of 2019 of the Best of Photojournalism.
Mhm.
On page 4 is my editor column. The headline is, "For this issue, few words are better." Okay, so, and then it's followed by few words. The whole point of taking pictures is so that you don't have to explain things with words. It's a quote by Elliot Erwitt.
Yeah.
I'm like, enough said. For this issue, that's all I needed.
Yeah.
And it's a risk. I didn't ask anybody's permission. I don't know what people think, and I
Yeah.
really don't care. I felt like it was appropriate for this. I've always been a risk taker, and I finally don't have to be asking permission to take those risks.
That's
I'm
great.
serious.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wanted to pitch like real minimal stuff in newspaper design,
Mhm.
like doing something like my column looks
Yeah.
in a newspaper. The New York Times has done it.
Yeah.
But nobody would ever follow me down that rabbit hole. So I'm in my old rabbit hole, and I don't know what people think, but I'm at the point in my life I'm like, I don't really care. It's just I just want the content to rise to the top. And I figured, you know what? Nobody needs to read what I think in this issue. They just need to look at it.
Yeah. And I mean,
And yeah,
and that's something that you did in this issue a lot. I mean, other than just the captions, and then Chip has and a handful of other photographers have like a very short
yeah,
um 150 words or 200, like maybe
yeah,
tops. Like I think Chip has like the longest column, maybe, or longest article in there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's just photos, which is, again, where it's one of those, like, even the New York Times Magazine, which, like, every once in a while they'll have like a big photo spread or something, but like they used to be really really heavy on photos. There used to be like at least once a month there'd be like one issue that has like just photos at the back, I feel. And even that's sort of drained away too, which is painful because it's one of the few magazines that's actually even they've gotten smaller too, now that I think about
yeah,
it. which
yeah.
is which is so, like, again, but it's great to see like some of, I mean, Chip is the photo photographer of the year, was it?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And like just some of the photos that you've seen in newspapers, and usually small, like, I mean, I love there's a full layout. It's just like I show you what photo I'm talking about. The full layout of the Brett Kavanaugh's
Oh my
handwriting.
god. Oh my god.
Yeah,
When I laid that across the double truck like that,
yeah,
it's like, holy moly.
yeah. Oh, and
That
it's
this is a window into somebody's working mind,
yeah,
and it's fascinating to me.
He
Um,
keeps getting those too. I think he's the one that just got the photo of President Trump's like notes.
yeah,
So
probably.
I can't believe that they haven't like figured that out yet. Like the
Yeah,
telephoto lenses, like
it's very cool. I mean, he writes in
yeah,
Sharpie, it looks
yeah,
like, and that's hard to write in.
yeah,
But it's like you look at everything and it's like, wow,
yeah,
that is just fascinating to me. And it's kind of magic, and I kind of to me it's equivalent of watching a print come up in the darkroom up
yeah,
out of the chemicals as I play with pictures and picture size on pages.
yeah,
Things just you just have to let them work. And the biggest struggle is that sometimes I get pictures as big as I want them, and then I realize, holy crap, the gutter is right down the middle
oh,
of
I
somebody's
know.
face. I'm like, well, I can't do that.
Yeah,
So, how many pictures? Okay, you just don't. And then you really start to realize how photographers make pictures. And
yeah.
most of the time, everything is like right smack in the middle of the frame. And you're like, would you please knock it off a little bit? But but then it's like, yeah, right, right. They're not going to do that. I'm never going to
Yeah,
tell somebody to stop, composing just on account of me. But it's funny. It's kind of true though. It's
yeah.
true.
No, I just having that experience. There's a magazine I was looking at, and and like literally the gutter just killed the photo because they put
Oh
it.
my god, I
And
know.
I was just
I
like,
know I know what you're
oh,
talking about.
yeah. And it's but what was I mean, did you have any favorites from this? Like I
Oh
know
my god, there's
like
so
I'll have to
many.
pop up some of the pages or something like that up on the screen when we're
You
talking.
know what picture just blows me away, and I was really a little bit worried about it, um, as it printed because, okay, it's
Mhm.
Wally's opening spread 40. Oh, what page is it on? Page
Uh
44, 45. Oh my god, this
oh,
is
the
just
surf.
like,
Yeah,
oh,
there's
and I was a little bit worried because I was kinda concerned that that person was gonna be really lost off the edge of the page.
yeah.
But I'm like, I got my little box of magazines just the other day, and I opened it up, I was like, "Oh, it worked. It
Yeah.
worked."
No, it does.
And it's
This
just
is
like, just the immensity. And what I really truly love about this picture is because, I've seen a lot of surfing pictures, but
mhm.
it's the news value of this.
Yeah,
And it says it's about California.
yeah,
It's about that is a firestorm cloud above this
yeah.
surfer.
The caption,
And
the cat.
and of
Oh,
course,
I should
yeah,
just read the caption for because a lot of people will be listening. This is Wally Scalich. It's
yeah,
Scalich.
Skelly.
Um, from the LA Times, Sports Photographer of the Year. A surfer rides a wave off of. I should read it correctly. A surfer rides a wave off Zuma Beach in Malibu, California, despite smoke from the Woolsey fire in November 2018, and it is basically, I would say, 90% smoke clouds, um, and background, and then you have this fine line of a surfer running a small wave down the bottom. I mean, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous photo that so rarely do you have like really genuinely like sports photography and news like
Mhm.
really crossing. And I apologize to sports photographers like that if that's offensive to say news versus sports news. But it's but with
Well, those
California,
things come together with this, right,
yeah,
right.
exactly, yeah. And in such an amazing way. I mean, and that's something like if you look at the rest of his work, it's just very stark. It's like
And
just a full night sky, and then you have this little tiny figure in the bottom right hand corner. Um,
oh
like
god,
yeah,
the
on the
moon,
next page.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, it's incredible. And he sees not only just super graphic, but,
yeah.
his sports stuff, action is
So
just
I
outstanding.
would definitely love to just like talk through this entire
I
time,
know,
but we're
right?
already
Let's go to the
over. I
next
think
page.
I mean it's very rarely that you actually get to talk with like not only a layout, an editor with about their work, but I promised you this would be 20 to 30 minutes, and we're already
That's
30
right.
over 30.
I
But
know.
is there anything that I guess this is a double question. Like, is there anything that you want to do with the magazine going forward? And also, is there any way that photojournalists, especially NPPA, members and that sort of thing, can help? And what kind of how people can get involved and how and what, or if you want people to get involved, I don't know. But
Yes, 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 and yes, and yes. Become a member. Please become a member. If you cannot become a member, buy the magazine.
yeah,
We will have that link fixed soon on the website. Um, Pitch stories to me. If you've got a project that you're running, I want to know about it.
hmm
It's not that I'm going to promise you to run it, but I want to know. I want to know what's out there. I honestly, and the other issues, I use these openers and enders kind of like as a bookends
yeah,
to the content in the middle. And honestly, I find those on social media, on Instagram, and I just do screenshots and I save them
yeah,
to my photo roll and go through them when it's time to like edit, email the photographer and go, hey, can I use this? And more importantly, and you mentioned this about the BOP issue, is that the stories that the top award winners wrote for me.
yeah.
Mary Calvert, oh my God, she's brilliant.
hmm
God, her pictures are just brilliant. They just totally blew me away. That opening spread of the grocery store scene, whew,
yeah.
just breaks my heart. Um, you know, I want to know the story behind the pictures. I want to know why people are motivated to do what we love.
Yeah.
And those are the best kind of stories for this magazine, in my opinion, when it comes to talking about it, because we don't, with everything that's going on now, it's so hard to parse out that we just don't have the opportunity
Yeah.
to stop for a minute and consider what we do and the impact that we have.
hmm
And I think that is pretty fucking cool.
I think it's also it's so incredibly important because we live in this age of fake news and I've never been more. I always tell it's a story I've told a million times. Where like I never thought in a million years that as a photojournalist working in the United States, I'd have to carry around a helmet and a bulletproof vest to cover things.
Yeah,
Um,
think, right?
yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a personal like I should actually wear them more often. That's the problem. But because
But you have to think that
yeah,
way. You
and
have to
and
be prepared.
and one of the, I mean, and you get it from all sides and everything. I mean, for me personally, it's a little more dangerous from one side or the other, but you get the, oh, you're just paparazzi. You don't care about these things. And like, I hear, obviously 80% of my friend circle on social media are photojournalists or photographers. And so many times privately, obviously within, because they don't want that to be public and people to read it, that are readers or, people that are going to buy their work or whatever, and just pouring out their hearts about how tough it was, the fights that they're having about taking certain photos, what could be done with them and things like that. And the struggles that just getting a photo from even places in the United States, getting a photo out to the public, how important it is and how we do not do a good job of, like, journalism in general, I don't think does a good job of selling themselves, but like to the
No,
American public. But photojournalists, I think honestly we're the worst when it comes
yeah,
to telling like what's our importance, why we have to physically be there, like unlike
it's crazy,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and the before I let you go, I wanted to definitely talk to you. I saw your fantastic trailer for a doc that you're working on called Born to Die. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'll try to be brief because it's a complicated
Yeah,
story.
yeah,
This came out of my master's work at Ohio University in the School of Visual Communications 8 years
mhm,
ago. About 5 years ago, I did a Kickstarter to help me make it into a bit of a more like a feature length film. I'm
yeah,
not sure exactly how long it's going to be. Um, I believe I'm done filming.
mhm.
I've had a great collaboration with my buddy Kevin Gurman. He was second camera the last few years. I'm so incredibly proud to say that the band Cake uh,
Oh wow, yeah,
has some interest in it. They donated to the Kickstarter campaign.
that's right.
That's kind of a bit of a long story, but they are activists in their own right. Um, So it's pretty cool. So as I moved to Athens, Ohio in July,
Mhm.
it's where we're going to make our home. Um, that will be close to my project of Last Chance Corral.
Cool.
And I think it'll be very motivating to get this thing finally produced and done. But
I know the feeling.
it's one of those passion projects that we all know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And and it, I need to get it done for the sake of Last Chance Corral. But in this process,
Mhm.
it has actually helped them so much
Well,
already.
just tell briefly, I'll put the trailer and the link, obviously in the show notes and things sort of thing, but
Okay.
what briefly, what, it's about, foals
Okay.
that are born and
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
I'm an animal person. I'm an animal. I'm not one of the crazy PETA animal activists. I apologize if that sounds terrible, but I'm not. I just I just care a lot about animals. Last Chance Corral is a very unique horse rescue in Athens, Ohio, and 6 months out of the year, January through June, is foaling season, which baby horses are born. Given that they are in southern Ohio, so close to the Kentucky border, which is the bluegrass state, which has a lot of breeding for thoroughbred and very expensive race horses
yeah,
or other kinds of breeding horses. Um, there's a large contingency of what's called nurse mare foals, and they are throwaway foals. That has a lot to do with the breeding industry in general.
yeah,
Um, and so they rescue maybe 8 to 10 foals at a time. They work with the nurse mare farm to get these hours to a day old foal into the hands of Last Chance Corral so they can be uh, taken care of and get healthy enough to adopt out within days or weeks.
yeah,
And it's a phenomenal thing that a lot of people just don't know about or they don't talk about.
yeah,
And it's a balance. It's a delicate balance of a lot of people working together for different reasons. It's messy.
yeah. And it's another, I mean, there's
And
been a lot of talk about the horse racing industry. I mean, we had
mhm,
one stable, 26 horses die last year in one stable alone, with thoroughbred horses. And then I think there was some serious accident at one of the big races where I don't know. I don't think the horse had to be put down, but so I mean, it's
there
I've
are
always been,
problems.
yeah, yeah. I've always been really uncomfortable about the horse racing and dog racing for that matter industry, but this I didn't know about this at all, and I highly recommend going to Born to Die, that's die.org, and watching the trailer, and it's really great. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
especially whether or not you care about, I don't know who out there, if you're listening and you don't care about animals, what's wrong with you? But whether or not like animal rescues or whatever your thing, like this one will I think touch home, because horse racing is something, especially as of late, we've been talking about. But so go check out that. Make sure you go to nppa.org if you're not a member. And you're a photojournalist, become a member, or if you're in the world. And of course, always we'll put out the link, and we'll definitely promote once you guys have all the links fixed for subscribing to News Photographer, even if you're not an NPPA member. We'll put that out, and add that into the show notes and everything like that, because I love the idea. Like I leave this magazine around every once in a while, and like family members or whatever just end up picking up and going, wow, this is fantastic. And obviously, my family is kind of biased towards photojournalism a little bit. um, but the fact that I think that it's a really good interest and a really good look into the lives that we all live, that I think that people outside of the industry, I think it's really, really important. We rarely get movies made about us that are positive,
Yeah, no
as
kidding.
photojournalists. So I think it's important that people actually kind of get, like, what we're talking about, and understand what we're doing. But thanks again, Sue Morrow.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
What's your do you have a Twitter handle or anything like that you
Oh,
want to push?
yeah. And to add, you can also post my NPPA email, smorrow@nppa.org, if they want to reach out for subscription information. That's a good way to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm at Sue L. Morrow on Twitter and Instagram. Facebook is becoming less and less part
Yeah.
of my personal picture, but I do tend the NPPA Facebook page along with some others that help to do that. Great.
And thanks again. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hold on.
Appreciate your time. Okay.
Thanks so much for listening to Around the Lens BTS. If you listened this far, then I'm betting you like this conversation and you'll like more of them. If that's true, I'm going to ask you to head over to patreon.com/aroundthelens and start supporting our podcasting for as little as $1 a month. That'll get you early and sometimes exclusive access to podcasts and reviews that we put out. Your support will allow us to spend more time on the show and expand our reviews, conversations, and more. That again is patreon.com/aroundthelens. And remember, you can watch us live on facebook.com/aroundthelens or subscribe to Around the Lens podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and all the places that you get your podcasts.